With the Thanksgiving coming up, look at what I added to my kitchen collection. A fabric pot holder. This is a real simple project and I recommend this for beginners and anyone who really wants to sew something easily with lesser time. Now let's get right into it. I have cut my cotton fabric 10 by 10 inches in size and we'll need 2 from that. For a pot holder, we need to have an insulated thermal batting sizing the same as the fabric. But I don't have any at the moment and I'm only sewing this for my own use. Because of that, I have cut some old clothes with a little bit of thickness in it to work as a thermal batting. You can use old towels or cotton batting, nothing synthetic. Choose 1 or 2 layers according to your preference and I'm using 2. We also need a piece of cotton fabric measuring 5 by 2 inches in size. Let's start with ironing all the fabric pieces. I have already washed all the fabrics to prevent any shrinking. Just give everything a quick press before you start any sewing. Take the small fabric piece and face it wrong side up. Now fold it in half and give a little press. Unfold the piece and fold one of the smaller halves to touch the center line. Press it to keep the crease. Do the same to the other half as well. Fold to touch the center line and give it a little press. Now fold the piece in half like this and press again. I'm using a pin to hold the fold. We are going to sew along this folded edge. Remove the pin and sew closer to the open edge. That way we are making sure the open end is properly closed. Do a little backstitch at the beginning and at the ending. We are using this piece to hang the pot holder. Trim all the threads. Now it's done, we can assemble all the fabric pieces together. I'm starting with one of the fabric pieces I'm using as the thermal layer. Lay flat that layer on a surface and then place the wrong side of the one fabric piece on top of that. Make sure everything is aligned. Then place the other fabric layer on top of that, facing the right sides together. If your fabric has a pattern, make sure everything faces according to that. Finally, place the remaining thermal fabric layer on top. Since I'm using 2 thermal layers, we have 4 layers of fabrics here. Now fold the fabric stripe we use for hanging in half and place it in between the 2 fabric layers. It has to be aligned with one of the corners. Longer end pointing inwards and positioning in a diagonal way to the fabric square. You can also leave a little bit of fabric stripe outwards like this to make sure it will attach properly while sewing. Pin that to all 4 layers. Also, start to pin all the way around the fabric layers since we are ready to sew everything together. Make sure all the layers fit each other, and if not, you can cut those parts out. I'm using more pins because this has a lot of layers, and I hope my basic sewing machine can handle this. If you're not sure, you can also use only one thermal layers as well. Leave 3 to 4 inches of space to turn inside out, and you can even mark it using a fabric marker. Starting at one of these marked points, we are going to sew all the way around, leaving that 3 to 4 inch space. I'm leaving about 3/8 inch seam allowance, which is also the same as 10 mm. It's the one located between the 1/4 inch and the 1/2 inch. Remove the pins as you go and stop and pivot while the needle is down when you reach the corners. Make sure the footer is raised as well. You don't need to do this, but I did a little back stitch at the corner with the fabric stripe just to give it more strength. Remember to backstitch at the beginning and at the ending as well. Stop the sewing when you reach the other marked point. Trim all the threads. Trim the corners without damaging any stitches to reduce the bulky parts. Except the corner with fabric piece for hanging. I don't want to lose anything. Remove all the pins and let's turn inside out using the space we left. Use something with a blunt end like a wooden rod to poke the corners out. Hand press as much as you can, including all the sides. We can iron everything flat later. Adjust your iron settings to cotton and give it a good press, especially the opening. With that done, we are going to do a top stitch enclosing this opening. I'm starting to sew from the side with the opening. That way I don't have to worry about it later. Try to sew closer to the edge as possible and remember to do a little back stitch at the beginning. I found out that when you sew projects with more fabric layers, it's easier to use a walking foot instead of the standard foot that I'm using. The thing is, I only have a basic sewing machine and it didn't come with one. I'm trying to work with what I have, and to be honest, I'm okay with it because these are for my personal use only. If you are making these for selling, you might need to consider that. Do a little back stitch at the end and trim all the threads. The opening is closed and our pot holder is ready to use. If you're up for it, you can do a little bit of quilting as well. If you are looking for something simple, you can draw 2 simple diagonal lines and do a top stitching. The thing is, I don't think my sewing machine can handle these thick corners. Because of that, I'm drawing 2 perpendicular lines crossing in the middle. Fold the pot holder in half and mark the midpoint. Draw a straight line parallel to that side. Do the same for the other side as well. Mark the midpoint and draw a straight line across it. Now we are going to top stitch these 2 lines one at a time. Just sew along the drawn line and remember to backstitch at the beginning and at the ending. You can also do some freestyle quilting as well. Trim the threads. Now move to the other line. Be creative with whatever works for you and you'll be done with flying colors at this point. Trim all the threads. I'm giving it a little press to get rid of those marked lines because I have used a heat erasable fabric marking pen to draw. With that done, your pot holder is ready to serve you in the coming baking season. I really love how it turned out and you have to try this one out. Please subscribe to see more DIY projects and some hand sewing with my small business as well. Thank you for watching and I'll join you in the next one.